The divorce settlement hit a trap, and I didn't see it. Not because I was careless, not because I didn't read, because the trap wasn't in the big, bold lines. It was in a sentence so small, so ordinary, so easy to skim, that it looked like nothing. And that sentence almost cost me my home, my savings, and the one thing I thought the settlement was supposed to buy me: peace. The day the trap snapped shut, it was a quiet Thursday in late October, outside Seattle. Gray sky, wet pavement, the kind of morning that smells like leaves and old coffee. I was in my kitchen, barefoot, hair twisted up, scrolling through emails while the kettle hissed. I remember it clearly because the subject line looked harmless. Final payment confirmation. From the escrow company. I stared at it for a second, confused, then opened it, and my stomach dropped. It didn't say final payment received. It said, final payment overdue. Notice of default will be issued, if not received, within 72 hours. I blinked hard, like the words might rearrange themselves if I stared long enough. Final payment, overdue, default. This wasn't a mortgage email. This was something else. Something tied to the settlement. Something I thought was done. My hands went cold on my phone because my divorce had been finalized 6 months earlier. 6 months of rebuilding. 6 months of learning how to breathe again. 6 months of believing that the worst part of my marriage was over because a judge had signed a paper saying so. But the email in front of me said the opposite. It said the past wasn't finished. It had just been waiting. My name is Lauren Whitmore. I was 41 when this happened. I work in risk management, financial compliance, exposure analysis, the kind of job that trains you to assume that if something looks clean, it's because the mess was hidden somewhere else. And even with all that training, I missed it, because I wanted to believe the settlement was the end. I wanted to believe a signature could close a chapter. But my ex-husband, Ethan, didn't believe in endings. He believed in leverage. Ethan and I were married 12 years. From the outside, we looked functional. 2 professionals, a nice home, neighbors who waved, friends who posted pictures of our date nights like we were proof that love could last. From the inside, Ethan was always negotiating, not in a loud way, in a quiet way. He negotiated who got the last word in every argument. He negotiated whose career mattered more. He negotiated what fair meant until fair started meaning whatever benefits him. By the time we filed for divorce, I thought I'd learned his patterns. I thought I could predict his moves. I was wrong. Because the trap wasn't in what he demanded. It was in what he offered. The settlement itself had seemed generous. Too generous. I remember sitting in the conference room with my attorney, Dana, staring at the proposed terms and feeling my eyebrows inch up. Ethan was offering to walk away from the house. He was offering to let me keep the home we'd bought together in Bellevue, the one with the maple trees, the remodeled kitchen, the backyard I'd planted with herbs like I was trying to grow stability. He was offering me full possession in exchange for a structured payout, a buyout. I would refinance into my name and pay him a fixed amount over 18 months. It was reasonable. It was clean. And Ethan's calm smile made it feel like he was finally being mature. Dana had warned me. "Lauren," she said quietly, "when someone who fights over everything suddenly becomes agreeable, it's usually because they're getting something else." "What else could he get?" I asked. Dana tapped the document. "We need to read every line." We did, or we thought we did. The buyout was spelled out. The timeline, the payment schedule, the refinance requirements. Ethan's attorney included a few standard clauses, a non-disparagement clause, a confidentiality clause, a general release. Then, buried in the back, in a section labeled Additional Provisions, there was a sentence that looked like boilerplate. It said, "In the event of any late payment or non-payment under the equalization schedule, respondent shall be entitled to pursue all remedies available at law and equity, including but not limited to reinstatement of joint ownership interest and immediate sale of the property." It looked like legal language. It looked like nothing. Dana glanced at it and said, "Standard enforcement language." I trusted her. I trusted the fact that judges sign settlements every day. I trusted that if there was a trap, someone would have flagged it. And mostly, I trusted that Ethan wanted the money more than he wanted revenge. So I signed. The judge signed. The divorce was final. I refinanced. I paid the first 5 payments early, because I wanted this done, because I wanted Ethan out of my life like a splinter removed cleanly. Then October happened. Work got chaotic. A system upgrade, a vendor issue, long nights. And on top of that, my mother got sick. Not dramatic sick, quiet sick. Hospital visits, medication schedules, the kind of sick that changes your calendar without asking. One payment, just one, slipped. It wasn't a refusal. It wasn't me not paying. It was a delay. I scheduled it the next morning, thinking it would land with no problem. Then the email came. Final payment overdue. Default notice within 72 hours. Final payment. I stared, confused. Final payment wasn't due for months. So why was escrow talking like this was the end? My fingers shook as I searched my email history and found the original settlement payment schedule. There it was. Payment number 6, due October 15th. I looked at the date on my phone, October 18th, 3 days late, just 3. I exhaled. Okay, fine. Annoying, but fixable. I called the escrow company. A woman answered, polite, efficient. "Hi," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I received a notice about a late payment. I submitted it this morning. Can you confirm receipt?" She clicked keys, then said something that made my throat tighten. "Ma'am, we cannot accept a late payment without written authorization from the respondent." I blinked. "What?" "It's in the instructions," she said. "For payments under this settlement, if a payment is not received by the due date, we are instructed to freeze the account and issue default procedures unless respondent authorizes acceptance." My stomach dropped. "Who instructed that?" I asked. She hesitated. "The settlement instructions provided by counsel," she said. Counsel. Meaning Ethan's attorney. Meaning? Ethan had set it up so one late payment triggered a lock, a lever, a trap. "But I already sent the money," I said. "I understand," she said gently, "but we are required to return it unless we receive authorization." "Return it?" My chest tightened. "Return it to who?" "To the sending account," she said, "and then we proceed with default notice." I felt cold. "Default notice to who?" I asked. "To both parties," she said. "Both parties." Meaning, Ethan would have proof I was in default. Proof he could use. I swallowed hard. "Can I speak to a supervisor?" She transferred me. The supervisor repeated the same thing. Then he added, like he was reading a script, "The default provisions allow respondent to pursue remedies." Remedies. That word again. The same word from the clause I barely noticed. The clause Dana called standard. I hung up and stared at my kitchen wall, like it might explain how my life was about to change because of 3 late days. Then my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Right on time. "Looks like you missed a payment. I'll be filing the enforcement motion." My skin went tight. He didn't ask if I was okay, didn't ask why, didn't say, just send it. He went straight to filing, because this wasn't an accident, it was a plan. I called Dana immediately. She answered with a sigh like she'd been waiting. I just got Ethan's text, I said. He says he's filing an enforcement motion. Escrow won't accept my late payment without his authorization. Dana went silent for a second, then, okay, breathe. Dana, I whispered, he's going to take the house. No, she said quickly, not if we move fast. Forward me the email and forward the text. I did. Dana called back 10 minutes later, voice tight. Lauren, that clause is worse than I thought. My throat tightened. What do you mean? She exhaled. It gives him the right to pursue remedies, including reinstatement of joint ownership interest and immediate sale. That means he's going to argue that your late payment voids the buyout agreement. Void. I felt dizzy. You're telling me one late payment could undo the entire settlement? He's going to try, Dana said. And if he succeeds? I asked. Dana paused. Then he could force the home sale. Or he could reclaim an ownership interest. Or he could negotiate from a position of power. Power. That was it. The trap wasn't the house. The trap was power. Ethan had built a settlement that looked like closure, but functioned like a choke collar. He'd given me the house on paper, as long as I performed perfectly. No sickness, no emergency, no late paycheck, no human life. One mistake, and he could yank the chain. I felt my jaw clench. Why would a judge sign that? I asked. Dana's voice was bitter. Judges sign what parties agree to, she said. And your previous payments made it look reasonable. Ethan designed it so he'd look fair. Until you slipped. My hands trembled, so that was the trick. He offered me what I wanted most. Stability, then hid a clause that would let him threaten it whenever he wanted. And the cruelest part, it wasn't illegal. Not clearly. It was just predatory. Dana filed an emergency motion the same day. We asked the court to allow the cure of the late payment. We argued good faith. We provided proof of my mother's hospital visits. We attached the payment confirmation. We attached Ethan's text showing immediate intent to enforce. And while Dana worked, I did something else. I pulled the settlement again and read it like it was a bomb manual, line by line. And that's when I found the second trap. Not the big clause, the quiet one. The payment instructions required my payments to go through escrow. But the escrow account also charged administrative fees after each payment, fees that increased if a payment was late. And here was the twist. Those fees were not capped, meaning every time Ethan forced a default procedure, the fees grew, and the fees were added to my balance, meaning Ethan could weaponize default not just to threaten the house, but to inflate the amount I owed. I felt sick. It was elegant, cruel, a trap that fed itself. I called Dana back. There are uncapped fees, I said. He can inflate the balance. Dana's voice went sharper. Okay, she said. We add that to the motion. It shows the clause is unconscionable. Unconscionable, a legal word that means so unfair it should not stand. But fairness is not automatic in court. It's argued, proven, fought for, and Ethan loved fights. He filed his enforcement motion 2 days later. He didn't just ask the court to accept a late payment. He asked the court to declare me in default, reinstate his ownership interest, and order immediate listing of the home for sale. Immediate sale. The words made my stomach twist. Because if the court ordered sale, I wouldn't just lose the house. I would lose the neighborhood, the stability, The place where my mother could stay when she got out of the hospital. The place I had rebuilt my life around. Ethan wanted that, not because he needed money, because he wanted to prove he could still move my world whenever he felt like it. The hearing was set for the following Thursday. A week. 7 days of waking up with dread under my ribs. I barely ate, barely slept. I worked during the day and gathered evidence at night. Hospital receipts, calendar logs, email threads, escrow notices. I built a binder like I was preparing for war, because I was. On Wednesday night, Ethan called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. His voice was calm, almost amused. "You should have just paid on time," he said. "Now you're going to learn what happens when you don't." I saved it, because threats are also evidence. Thursday came. The courtroom was cold, bright lights, hard benches. Ethan sat on the other side in a tailored suit, looking relaxed like this was a meeting he'd scheduled. He glanced at me once and smiled, not warm, victorious, like he'd been waiting for me to make one mistake. Dana leaned toward me. "Don't react," she whispered. "Let him talk himself into a corner." The judge entered, an older woman with tired eyes. She flipped through the file, then looked up. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, "you're requesting reinstatement of ownership interest in sale based on a payment 3 days late?" Ethan's attorney stood. "Yes, Your Honor," he said smoothly. "The settlement is clear. Timely payment was a condition. Respondent's remedies are spelled out." The judge looked at me. "Miss Whitmore," she said, "did you make the payment?" "Yes," I said. 3 days late. It was an emergency. I attempted to cure immediately." Ethan's attorney smiled slightly. "Cure is not permitted without respondent's authorization, Your Honor. That's the agreed procedure." The judge's eyes narrowed a fraction. "Why is cure not permitted?" she asked. Ethan's attorney shrugged politely. "It was negotiated." "Negotiated." Dana stood. "Your Honor," she said, calm, "this clause was designed as a punitive trap. It prevents cure, creates uncapped administrative fees, and allows the respondent to reclaim ownership and force sale over a minor delay. We request the court permit cure and deny enforcement." Then Dana did the thing that made Ethan's smile falter. She played the voicemail. "You should have just paid on time. Now you're going to learn what happens when you don't." The courtroom went quiet. The judge stared at Ethan. Ethan's attorney shifted. Dana continued, "Your Honor, this is not about enforcing fairness. It's about leveraging a minor lateness to seize the home and renegotiate the settlement." The judge leaned back slightly, eyes sharp. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, "is that your voice?" Ethan swallowed. "Yes," he said. The judge looked down at the settlement again. Then she said, slowly, "This court does not exist to facilitate ambush." Ambush. The word landed like a hammer. Ethan's face tightened. The judge continued, "I will not order sale of a home over a 3-day delay where payment has been tendered and good faith is shown. The payer may cure. Escrow is instructed to accept the payment." I felt my lungs expand, but the judge wasn't done. "And as to these uncapped administrative fees," she said, tapping the page, "they appear punitive." Punitive? My hands trembled slightly. The judge looked at Ethan's attorney. "Counsel," she said, "you will provide a full accounting of fees assessed and the purpose of such structure. This court may modify enforcement provisions to prevent abuse." Modify. Meaning? Change. Meaning? The trap could be defanged. Ethan's smile was gone now. His jaw worked like he wanted to speak. He didn't, because he couldn't argue with the judge's tone. Dana squeezed my arm under the table. Not a celebration. A reminder. Stay steady. The judge concluded. Motion for immediate sale denied. Cure permitted. Payment accepted. Further enforcement requests will be viewed with scrutiny. Scrutiny. Ethan stared forward, face tight. And in that moment, I realized something. The trap didn't just fail, it backfired, because now the judge saw him, not as a reasonable ex-spouse enforcing a deal, but as a man setting snares. And once a judge sees you that way, your leverage evaporates. Outside the courtroom, Ethan tried to approach me. Dana stepped between us. Through counsel, she said. Ethan's voice hissed. You think you won? I looked at him, calm. I think you lost control, I said. His eyes flashed. You don't get to rewrite the agreement. I tilted my head. You tried to rewrite my life, I said, with a hidden clause. His face drained slightly. Then he walked away. 2 weeks later, the escrow company sent an updated instruction sheet. The judge had ordered a modification. Cure allowed within 10 days. Fees capped. No reinstatement of ownership for minor delays. No forced sale absent substantial breach. Ethan's trap was gone. And what was left was the settlement, as it should have been from the start. A structured exit, not a loaded weapon. I finished the payments early after that. Not because I was afraid anymore, because I wanted the last tie cut clean. The day I made the final payment, I didn't celebrate with champagne. I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee and watched the maple leaves fall. And I felt something quiet settle in my chest. Not happiness, freedom. Because I learned something from that trap. People like Ethan don't just want money. They want an excuse to stay in your life. They want a lever they can pull whenever they feel small. They want a clause they can point to so they can claim they're just enforcing, while they're actually punishing. So here's the lesson I wish someone had drilled into me before I signed that settlement. Read the settlement like your future depends on the smallest sentence. Because it does. Ask, what happens if I'm late? Ask, is cure allowed? Ask, are fees capped? Ask, does a minor mistake trigger a major penalty? Because if the penalty for a small slip is losing your home, that's not enforcement, that's a trap. And the moment you see the trap, you stop negotiating with fear. You start negotiating with clarity. The divorce settlement hit a trap. But the trap taught me something too. If someone is willing to weaponize a piece of paper, they were never seeking peace. They were seeking control. And control only works until you shine a light on it, until you show the judge, until you show the world, until you stop trying to be nice and start being precise. That's how I kept my home. That's how I kept my name. And that's how I finally ended my marriage the way it should have ended from the start, with the truth. After the hearing, I thought Ethan would back off. Not because he suddenly grew a conscience, but because the judge had basically told him, in courtroom language, I see you. And men like Ethan hate being seen. They prefer fog. They prefer technicalities. They prefer to stand behind paper and say, I'm just enforcing what you agreed to, while pretending the agreement wasn't designed like a snare. But Ethan didn't back off. He pivoted. Because if you can't win by snapping the trap, you win by dragging the person through the mud long enough that they're exhausted. 2 days after the court allowed my cure and ordered escrow to accept payment, I got another email. Not from escrow, from Ethan's attorney. Subject line, notice of breach, confidentiality, confidentiality. My stomach dropped because the settlement included a confidentiality clause. Standard, they said. Normal, they said. Don't discuss details publicly. I hadn't. Not online, not in writing, not anywhere that mattered. So I opened the email, heart pounding. It claimed I had disclosed settlement terms to third parties, and therefore triggered a penalty provision. Penalty. I felt the old fear spike again, because I remembered reading that confidentiality clause and thinking it was harmless. Then I remembered something else. Ethan's version of harmless meant useful later. I called Dana immediately. I just got a breach notice, I said. He's claiming I violated confidentiality. Dana sighed. Forward it, she said. I did. Then I waited, staring at my kitchen wall, hearing the kettle click, watching steam curl like my nervous system leaving my body. Dana called back. Her voice was sharper now. He's alleging you disclosed to your employer, she said. My chest tightened. What? I didn't. He attached an exhibit, Dana continued. It's a screenshot of an email thread. It looks like it came from HR at your company. I went cold. I walked to my laptop and opened the attachment Dana forwarded, and there it was. A message in an HR thread with my name in it, referencing divorce settlement payment schedule. It looked real. It was formatted correctly. It even had an internal reference number, but I knew instantly I didn't write that. I didn't send that. Because I would never email HR about my settlement schedule. Not in a million years. My mouth went dry. This is fake, I whispered. Dana paused. I agree, she said. But we need to prove it. Prove it. The same brutal rule again. A lie is treated like truth until you can document the opposite. Dana explained what Ethan was doing. The confidentiality clause had a penalty. If either party breached, they owed a lump sum liquidated damages amount. It sounded reasonable on paper, discouraging public shaming. But Ethan had written it like a second trap. Because liquidated damages can be enforced quickly. And if he could claim I breached, he could demand a huge payment. Or worse, he could argue the breach voided my rights under the buyout. A second way to yank the chain. I stared at the fake HR screenshot. My hands shook. He's forging evidence, I said. Dana's tone went cold. He's trying, she said. But this is risky for him. Courts don't like fabricated exhibits. Then why would he do it? I asked. Dana didn't answer right away. Then she said, because he thinks you'll panic and settle. Settle. That word meant surrender. Ethan didn't want to win in court. He wanted to win in my nervous system. He wanted me so tired and scared that I'd sign anything to make him stop. But I was done signing. Dana told me to do 2 things immediately. 1, contact my IT department to verify if any emails existed matching the screenshot. 2, preserve my devices, phone, laptop, so we could show I didn't send anything. So I did. I called my company's IT help desk and asked carefully for an audit of the alleged email. I didn't say divorce. I didn't say settlement. I said, I have reason to believe a screenshot was fabricated, and I need verification if an email exists in our system. IT was cautious but cooperative. They opened a ticket. They asked for the message ID. I didn't have it, because Ethan's screenshot conveniently cropped out the headers. Of course it did. Dana smiled when I said that. That helps us, she said. Cropping out headers is what people do when they're faking. Still, I couldn't breathe easily until I had proof, because the threat was immediate. Ethan's attorney's email demanded payment of the confidentiality penalty within 10 days. 10 days. Everything with Ethan was 10 days, 72 hours, immediate. He lived on deadlines because deadlines make you sloppy. I met Dana in her office the next day. She had the settlement spread open with tabs everywhere, yellow, pink, blue, like it was a crime scene. She tapped the confidentiality section. "Here," she said. "This is the trap inside the trap." I leaned closer. The clause didn't just prohibit disclosure. It defined disclosure broadly. So broadly, it could include speaking to a therapist, a financial advisor, or even a family member if terms were discussed. It was insane, but it was written, and I signed it. Dana exhaled. "This is why I hate these sweeping clauses," she said. "They're designed for weaponization." My stomach twisted. "So what do we do?" I asked. Dana's eyes were steady. "We file first," she said. "We don't wait for his next move." File first. That was my language too. Because when you let Ethan file first, he controls the frame. Dana drafted a motion for protective order and sanctions. We asked the judge to clarify that routine communications with counsel, escrow, lenders, and necessary professional advisors did not constitute breach. We asked the judge to require any breach claim to be supported by verifiable metadata. We asked the judge to order Ethan to cease harassing enforcement actions absent good faith. And most importantly, we requested sanctions for submitting a fabricated exhibit. Because if Ethan forged a screenshot, he wasn't just predatory, he was reckless. The hearing was scheduled quickly, within 2 weeks, because the judge had already flagged the settlement as potentially abusive. In that time, IT got back to me. They sent a formal note. No record existed of the email shown in the screenshot. No message ID, no server log, nothing, meaning the screenshot was fake. I forwarded that to Dana. Dana replied with one word: "Perfect." The day of the hearing, Ethan showed up looking calm again, tailored suit, relaxed shoulders, a man playing the role of reasonable ex-husband just enforcing rules. His attorney stood and said, "Your Honor, we're here on a breach of confidentiality. Ms. Whitmore disclosed settlement terms to her employer." Dana stood and handed the judge the IT letter. "Your Honor," she said, "the alleged email does not exist in the employer's system. The screenshot is fabricated." The judge's eyes narrowed. Ethan's attorney hesitated. Dana continued, "We also request the court require Mr. Whitmore to produce the original electronic file with metadata, as well as the device or account from which he claims he obtained it." The judge turned to Ethan's attorney. "Can you produce the original file?" she asked. Silence. Ethan's attorney glanced at Ethan. Ethan's jaw tightened. We only have the screenshot," his attorney admitted. The judge leaned back slowly. "Of course you do," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried that kind of disappointment that feels like an indictment. Then she looked directly at Ethan. "Mr. Whitmore," she said, "are you submitting fabricated evidence to this court?" Ethan's face went pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried. I received it," he said. "I didn't fabricate anything." The judge's gaze stayed fixed. "From whom?" she asked. Ethan swallowed. I can't say," he muttered. Dana didn't even smile. She simply said, "Your Honor, this is harassment, a pattern, a trap designed to threaten Ms. Whitmore's home through technical defaults, and now a fabricated breach claim." The judge sat very still. Then she spoke. "I am modifying this settlement," she said. "Modify." Again, like a door opening. The judge continued. "The confidentiality clause is narrowed. Disclosure will be limited to public dissemination or intentional publication. Routine communications and private discussions with advisors are excluded. Ethan's face tightened. And as to liquidated damages, the judge said, they are struck. The court will not enforce punitive penalties based on vague breach claims. Struck, meaning removed, meaning one of Ethan's sharpest blades just snapped in half. Then the judge looked at Ethan's attorney. Counsel, she said, you will provide an explanation for this exhibit, and if this court determines bad faith, sanctions will follow. Sanctions. That word did something to Ethan's posture. He shrank, not because he felt guilty, because he felt threatened. Outside the courtroom, Ethan tried to speak to me again. His voice was lower now, less confident. This is getting out of control, he said. I looked at him. You mean you are? I said quietly. His eyes flashed. You're turning the judge against me. I almost laughed. No, I said. You did that when you tried to ambush me. He stepped closer. I didn't move. I gave you the house, he hissed. I could have fought for it. I stared at him. You didn't give me anything, I said. You rented me my own stability and hoped I'd miss a payment. His face tightened. Dana stepped between us. Do not speak to my client, she said, through counsel. Ethan walked away, and for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Not fear, not rage, power, because power isn't yelling. It's knowing the person across from you has lost their levers. After that hearing, Ethan's behavior changed, not softer, smarter. He stopped texting, stopped calling, stopped sending notices. Instead, he tried to quietly interfere with escrow. He emailed them, asking them to reject my payments for insufficient memo lines. He asked them to require wet signatures on forms they'd never required before. He was trying to create friction, because friction creates delay. Delay creates default. Default creates leverage. But Dana anticipated it. She obtained a court order with specific payment instructions. Payments were to be accepted electronically. Receipt confirmed within 24 hours. No rejection absent court approval. In other words, the judge installed guardrails, and Ethan couldn't push me off the road anymore. The rest of the buyout period passed like a slow exhale. I paid on time. Early, sometimes. Not because I was terrified, because I wanted the last tie cut clean. The day I made the final payment, escrow sent a confirmation. This time, the subject line was simple: paid in full. No threat, no countdown, no trap. I stared at those 3 words for a long time. Then I forwarded it to Dana. Dana replied, "Congratulations, you're free." Free. I didn't throw a party. I didn't post online. I didn't call a dozen people. I walked into my living room, sat on the couch, and let the silence settle around me. Because freedom after manipulation doesn't feel like fireworks. It feels like your nervous system unclenching. 2 weeks later, we recorded the final deed transfer. Ethan's name came off the property. Mine remained. Clean, simple, the way it should have been. And that was the real ending. Not the judge's signature, not the settlement, the record. Because the record is what tells the truth after people stop talking. Months later, I ran into Ethan's sister at a coffee shop. We weren't close, but we'd been polite during the marriage. She looked awkward. Then she said quietly, "I heard what happened. I'm sorry." I nodded. "I'm okay," I said. She hesitated. He does that," she admitted. "He always has. He finds loopholes and calls it intelligence." I smiled slightly, not happy, just understanding. "It's not intelligence," I said. "It's insecurity with paperwork." She exhaled like she'd been holding that truth for years. When I walked out of that coffee shop, rain was starting. Seattle rain. Soft, steady. I pulled my coat tighter and thought about how close I came to losing everything because of one sentence I didn't respect enough. And that's what I want anyone listening to this to hear. The biggest traps aren't the obvious demands. They're the standard clauses, the boilerplate, the enforcement language. They're the parts everyone skims because you're tired and you just want it done. But divorce isn't just heartbreak, it's contract. And contracts can be designed like cages. So if you're ever signing a settlement and you feel relief rushing you toward the pen, pause. Ask the uncomfortable questions. What happens if I'm late? Is there a cure period? Are fees capped? Do remedies escalate reasonably? Does any clause allow the other person to reclaim what they just gave you? Because if one small slip can trigger a huge loss, that's not a settlement, that's a trap. And if you already signed something like that, you're not doomed. You document, you file, you show the pattern, you let the judge see the ambush, because the moment the ambush is seen, it loses its power. The divorce settlement hit a trap, but the trap taught me the most expensive lesson I've ever learned. Peace doesn't come from signing fast. Peace comes from reading slow, from protecting your future with your attention, from refusing to let someone keep a leash on you after the marriage is over. And when you finally cut that leash, you realize something beautiful. The only person who gets to decide what happens next is you.